Going back to the original Deliverance and the occasional request for an effects loop or for the more or less switch, which adds a stage of gain, to make that foot switchable, I think I said before, there will be a time that will be the conversation. There will be a time that conversation is ready to be had and needs to be addressed. And we didn't know when that was going to be. We just knew that at some point in time that would be the conversation, and there would be a time where we're going to morph, going to maybe give in, but we're also going to give more. The question would become, are we just putting in the loop and the switch jack to appease the players? That's kind of that old thinking of when somebody says this is almost good enough, it needs another switch. We have to take that apart and go, is that because they really want that other switch or control? Or is it because it's a convenient excuse not to buy? So we're like always trying to unpack the feedback that we get and see which is true. And it turns out they're all true. There are people that legitimately, it's a deal breaker that it didn't have a loop. Or that, I love it, but man, it's just like when I really like the overdrive sound and I really like the low gain sound. I just wish that they were foot switchable. That makes it a foot switchable amp. Okay, so then that takes the design ethos to a slightly different place. So we have to be very careful about why we're doing that and what is being accomplished. So even though we had all these sort of ideas and a little sort of a wish list or a checklist or a punch list of what we might do next with the amp, it doesn't really come down to actually doing it and actually grinding through the process until the time just presents itself. It becomes so demanding of a conversation that we're having it all the time, and that means that it really needs to be resolved now. And that time finally came about a year ago. During the pandemic, the late stages of the pandemic, and demand starts coming back, and people start going, what about the Deliverance? What about the Deliverance? It eventually gets to the point where, all right, it's time to actually vet out all these ideas, throw out the bad ones, refine the good ones, and then go to work. What happened during that period is we launched the Sound City brand, and that had a certain character, especially a nice clean character that was really appealing. So that didn't exist before when we were having the conversation about where the Deliverance might end up next. But that conversation sort of was there and worthy of being discussed, because one of the things that we wanted to do with the next series is evolve the design in a subtle way without really changing its base personality, without ruining its DNA. We already have a really nice overdrive sound. We have a nice power amp compression if you have the, if you're bold enough of a player to actually push it there. And then in the intervening years, we came out with the Power Station, which actually allowed you to push the Deliverance 120 into the territory where it actually do that at a sane volume level, which didn't exist before. So that opens up some possibilities for how we can evolve the design. What we focused on then was when you turn down the gain and the gain volumes in the less mode and turn the master volume up and turn your guitar volume down and play cleaner, what's that experience like? It's pretty damn good. Could it be better? Yeah, it could be a lot better. How could it be better? Well, let's listen to this other specifically dead clean amp design that we made and go, yeah, there's a big bold sort of voice in there that's rounder and fuller than what we have in the Deliverance right now. Does anybody care about that? We haven't had anybody complain about it or mention it or anything. So why would we change that? We would change that because we saw a potential to bring a little bit more of that to the table without upsetting the overall DNA of the design. The essential reason for going to the Series 2 would be to add the loop, finally give in on the loop. Okay, you guys win, and if we're going to put a loop, then somebody's going to want it to be foot switchable, anticipating that somebody's going to say, why didn't you X? And then, all right, well, it has a jack and a foot switch. Why don't you make the more or less switch foot switchable? Yeah, we can do that. Okay, the minute we do that, what's going to happen? Well, when I switch to the more mode, I don't have any control over the master volume now. It's the same volume as in less mode, which doesn't really help me because it doesn't change the volume level. I can't control the difference between, say, my crunch sound and my solo sound. Let's just take a little extra risk and put another knob on the front panel. Now, this is an amp that we don't want to have any extra superfluous functionality on the front panel. That's its thing, is that it's straight ahead. You come to me, you tell me what you want, I'll give it to you. But you have to massage it out. So we don't want to make it another, start morphing it into a multi-featured amp. We just need to give it the functionality that somebody that is going to actually understand and use that functionality would demand. That's functional and useful and an important thing to have. So that gives it enough strength to warrant putting another knob on the front panel. So that was, for us, a sort of a leap of faith. We're going to do this not just to gunk up the front panel, but because it's got a legitimate reason to exist. And that's our driving philosophy about every single product we make. The product has to have a reason to exist. The feature or function has to have a reason to exist, a good reason, and a reason grounded in experience of players ourselves and the players that we interact with. Those three things, the loop, the functionality of the loop, the foot switchable more or less mode, the functionality of that more mode, being the solo volume tied to it, and the enhancement and evolution of the clean sound, or the three essential things that add to the stew without changing the flavor of the stew. That was really the goal.